Hello, I'm Coach Monique, and welcome to Module 1 of Unlock Bold Change Signature Life Coaching Program. So many people struggle with stress, anxiety, and depression that's rooted in their thoughts, beliefs, expectations, and interpretations of the past. There are actually 4 core reasons that we all struggle. The first one is the belief that I'm not enough. And in my work as a coach for 16 years, I've worked with thousands of people all over the world. And I believe that conservatively, about 97% of the population struggles with knowing that they're enough. And it stands to reason that if you have this belief consciously or subconsciously, problems are inherent to life, right? There has to be a consequence to not being enough. The second is the belief that what I want is not available to me, even if others can have it. And of course, there are the tangible things, the home, the car, the family, the great career. But I often find that the intangibles, the belief that I am good enough, that I deserve love, that I can have connection, are often the most destructive. The third is the fear of rejection. As a species, we're actually not that old. And it wasn't that long ago when being rejected from your tribe meant you were likely to perish. And that's why sometimes we'll even recognize that my reaction is bigger than the situation, right? Someone doesn't email you or call you back right away, and suddenly you're creating the story that you've been rejected, and then you find out they're away on vacation. The fourth is the need for connection. We're actually designed, wired, and built to be connected. So if we're walking down the street and I smile at you and you don't smile back, chances are that's a conscious choice because we're wired to be connected. So I like to say everyone has a pie made up of these 4 ingredients, but everyone's pie is unique to them. Some people have a stronger I'm not enough trigger, others it's more about rejection. But what is universally true for all of us is that what we don't know runs the show because it's going unchallenged. So I believe in transformation through education, and in this work, I'm going to help you discover your root causes of your struggle and give you the tools, techniques, and education to overcome them. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with what I think is kind of a really fun fact. Do you know that the average person has about 65,000 thoughts a day? Now, if you're anything like me, when I first heard that statistic, I thought, no way, I'm not smart enough to think 65,000 things. But the truth of the matter is, when you outboard those conscious thoughts that get us through our day, the thoughts that we're left with are not brandy new thoughts. They're the same thoughts you had yesterday, last week, last month, a year ago. You've had for decades, and even more so, oftentimes those are not even your own original thoughts. They're thoughts and beliefs and expectations that you picked up when you were a child, from your family, at school, on the playground, your religious organization, things on television. Who knows where you got them? But what you think about matters. And so just because you're not aware of those thoughts, it's like gravity. It doesn't mean you're not impacted. So I like to say we broadcast with our thoughts, we attract with our feelings. So think about this. If you're thinking anxious thoughts, what do you start to experience in your body? Anxiety. If you're thinking happy, optimistic thoughts, right, what do you begin to experience in your body? It's certainly different. Actually, most Americans have relatively low body awareness. Unless you do a lot of athletics or a lot of yoga, the typical American isn't really keyed into their body. And guess what? Simply by keying into your body, you naturally and instinctively begin to relax. And being able to tap into your body will help you really tune into what's going on with you, because so often we're not even aware that we're stressed or we're anxious. Those things have become normalized. So someone may be able to look across the room and see that you're clenching your jaw, but you have no idea. As you begin to build body awareness and more awareness of your thought patterns, you will begin to see that those behaviors will shift in a natural, healthy way. So anytime you want to experience change, whether it's overcoming a struggle or even reaching for a stretch goal, change starts at the level of thought, because our thoughts, beliefs, expectations, and interpretations of past experiences drive our behaviors. And if you want to experience something different, you have to change your behaviors. So guess what? You got to go back. You have to address, first you have to become aware of, and then you have to address our thoughts, our beliefs, our expectations, and interpretations of past experiences. And when you do that, your life begins to change because your behaviors begin to change. So now we're going to engage in a fun little exercise, because I could explain this to you in 500 words or give you a real life experience to drive home that point. So all I want you to do is to sit back and relax, take a few deep breaths, and close your eyes, and just follow my voice. I want you to envision a large white bowl filled to the brim with fresh, bright, yellow lemons. Just see that bowl in your mind's eye. And now I want you to reach out, literally reach out and pick up one of those lemons. And as you do, feel your fingers roll around it. Feel the weight of that lemon in your hand, the dimples, the firmness of the lemon. Is it cool to the touch? Give it a squeeze in your hand. I want you to just really have the experience. And now know that next to that bowl is a safety knife. And I want you to reach out with your other hand and simply pick up the safety knife. And now cut your lemon in half. And as you do that, just feel the juice begin to run down into your hand. And put your knife down and take 1/2 of each lemon in each hand and bring it up to your nose and take a big whiff. Just really get a good smell of it. And now bring it to your lips and taste it. And notice what begins to happen. For the vast majority of people, when I do this exercise, they literally smell the lemon, they taste it, they'll begin to salivate, their jaw might clench. So you may be experiencing that in your body. So go ahead and open your eyes and we'll talk about that a little more. But the reason this happens to the vast majority of people is that your mind makes very little distinction about what's happening in real time and what's being vividly recalled. So when I work individually with clients or in large groups of people, right, I do what I call the oak tree feather exercise. So I'll have people pair up and one person will go first and they'll close their eyes and I will simply tell them to envision a large oak tree. Just see that large oak tree with these massive roots that are running deep into the center of the earth. And then I will ask their partner to give them a little shove on the shoulder. And 9.5 out of 10 times, the person who's envisioning the oak tree is totally stable in their feet. Then I have them open their eyes, take a deep breath, kind of like shrug their shoulders, have them close their eyes again, and then I tell them to simply envision a feather floating through the air. I'll say something like, of course you've seen a feather floating through the air. Just be present with that image. And then I will have their partners give them a really small shove on the shoulder. And I'll tell you what happens all the time. The people that when you're envisioning an oak tree, you're super sturdy and solid in your stance. When you're envisioning a feather, people will lose their balance. I've seen NFL players be able to be pushed over by a little old grandmother when they're envisioning a feather, and I've seen little old grandmothers who couldn't be pushed over when they're envisioning an oak tree. It's a powerful exercise, and I encourage you, partner up with someone and try it. It's particularly fun with children. So I like to give these exercises because this gives you a real life experience. What you think about matters, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. Because remember those 65,000 thoughts, we're not consciously aware of the vast majority of them, and that's a good thing. Because if we are, we would be overwhelmed. But our thoughts are just like gravity. You don't have to be aware of them to have the impact and the consequences of them. And when you're living with stress, anxiety, depression, feeling that you're not enough, those are the thoughts that you're broadcasting. And then guess what? You're not going to feel very good about yourself. And that's going to impact the experiences that you have in your life. I like to say, we don't show up in the world the way the world is. We show up in the world the way we are. So in all my years of doing this work, I've never met anyone who has an emotional attachment to oak trees, feathers, or lemons. But everyone has a physiological response of some kind. Now imagine when you do have an emotional attachment to the thoughts of fear and anger and frustration and stress and not being enough, how that impacts your body because there is that emotional connection. So in my 16 years of working with people, I've never had anyone who had an emotional attachment to oak trees, feathers, or lemons, but nearly everyone has a physiological response to those exercises. But imagine now when you're thinking thoughts of stress and duress, of not being enough, of fear, how that impacts your body in a really very serious way. And just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean it's not true. So let's take a moment to talk about the brain science behind unlocking bold change in your life. Okay. So humans are one of the only species that are born without the brain being fully developed. Actually, we're about in our mid-20s, 27, when the brain fully develops. So every moment of our lives, even before we're born, there are billions of neurons firing and wiring in our brain. There's even a term coined Hebb's law. What fires together, wires together. So what that means is the more you engage in a thought, belief, or expectation, the stronger the neurocircuitry becomes for you to have that thought. And since like attracts like, the more you have a thought, the easier it is to have similar thoughts to that. Now, if you're having phenomenal thoughts that you're enough, that you're happy, that you're thrilled with your life, that's a great thing. But in my professional experience, most people are not. So think about this. If you're having consistent thoughts around not being enough, around the world being a fearful place, about things don't work out for you, whatever those thoughts are, the more you're engaging in those thoughts, the stronger the neurocircuitry is for that. So then there's a part of your brain called the reticular activation system. And its role is to work as a gigantic, very fast-paced filter. It filters in what is a match for you and disregards information that is not. So if you are walking around believing that you're not enough, that the world's a scary place, that things never work out for you, your reticular activation system is uniquely calibrated to see that. And things that are a match will be allowed in. Things that are not a match to those thoughts will most likely be filtered out. But the good news is the opposite is true. So when you're walking around knowing that you're enough, when you're feeling optimistic, when you're feeling positive about yourself and your life, your reticular activation system will allow that in, and it is more likely to filter out things that are not a match. Things that others might perceive as fearful, you might perceive as an opportunity, for example. Personally, in my own life, I always say it always works out. I just always say it always works out. Guess what? Most of the time it does. So be very careful of the kinds of messages that you're giving yourself, and you want to begin to filter for the positive things that make you feel happy and confident and loving and successful. Because remember, it's about progress, not perfection. I can't say remember because I haven't told them that yet.
Keep in mind.
That's okay.
I never told them that, but I'll tell them now. So just as a side note, a very powerful side note, but a side note. So just as a side note, in this work, anytime I work with clients, I say it's about progress, not perfection. Because while perfection may seem like the ideal goal, unless you're going out for an Olympic gold medal, oftentimes perfection becomes very negative. Because perfection as a goal for most of us means that there are things outside of our control that need to happen in order for us to have our perfect outcome. So I like to say this work is about progress, not perfection. We want you to move down the continuum through the tools, techniques, and education that you're learning to have more progress. But also, when you backslide, and we all do, or you hit a rough patch in the road, you will have the tools and techniques to be empowered to move forward. You won't need to have to sit around and wait for the world to change. You will be changing, and it makes all the difference. So there's a term for all of this. It's called neuroplasticity. We used to believe that the brain you had by age 27 was the best brain you were ever going to get. And we now know that that's not true. Your brain changes throughout your whole life. And the most intimate experience your brain has is the thoughts you think, the beliefs that you engage in, your interpretations of past experiences, and your expectations. And as you update those and change those and make corrections at the level of thought, you'll have different kinds of experiences. Now that we've talked about the science of it, I'm going to give you a fun exercise to do for real-world application. So this exercise might not be as good for you if you drive a green car, so substitute it with something like a yellow car. So can you remember the last time you saw a green car? I ask clients this question all the time, and most of the time they look at me and go, no, I have no idea. Well, the last time I checked statistically, about 14% of cars on the American highway are green. But most clients who don't drive a green car have no idea the last time they saw one. That's because the reticular activation system filters that out. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to tell you now that you're going to see green cars. When I give this assignment to clients and they come back the next week, they are amazed. They'll come back, I saw 11 cars, 19. The highest number we've ever had is 37 green cars. I actually had a woman on the porch of my office as she was leaving after I gave her the assignment yell, "There goes a green car." The next client sitting in the waiting room was totally confused. So anyway, I want you to begin to think about green cars. Now that I've told you you're going to see them, you will. Just keep track. It's a really great exercise that reinforces the idea that what you expect to see, you will see. So now we're going to get into the practical application of helping you to shift negative thinking to positive thinking. So I'm going to start with another little analogy. Let's say we're having a slow day and I bring out my goldfish Goldie. And I say to you, my goldfish Goldie is exceptional in the fact that she can understand language. And what I want you to do is to explain water to her. Now think about that for a moment. Is that going to be an easy thing to explain to her, or is it going to be more challenging? When I ask clients, they'll often say, well, that's easy. Well, Goldie, water's what you swim in and you're wet. And my response always is that Goldie's lived her entire life in water. She may have had a moment or two of non-water between the tanks, but I can guarantee you it was highly stressful. So if Goldie's lived her whole life in the water, wet and swimming, she doesn't know any different. She doesn't have any context. So actually explaining water to Goldie is probably going to be a challenging thing to do. Now let's think about that voice in your head, those 65,000 thoughts you're having a day. Those thoughts have been with you your whole life. You don't really know a life without them. So it's about context. It's very important when you want to experience any kind of change, it has to start at the level of thought. You've heard me say it before, and you're going to hear me say it again. So what do we do about our thoughts? I'm going to now teach you a very powerful technique that I trademarked years ago that's going to help you shift negative thinking not only to positive thinking, but oftentimes much more honest thinking. So the oldest form of communication and education is through storytelling because our mind works in pictures and stories. I'm going to give you an example now. Just take a deep breath, close your eyes. I'm going to give you a word, and I just want you to pay attention to what your mind does when I give you this word. The word is enophile. So just pay attention to what's happening, what's your mind doing. Is it trying to make sense of it? If you already know what the word is, just pay attention. Now, go ahead and open your eyes. Now I'm going to ask you to close your eyes again, and this time I'm going to give you a short phrase, and I want you to pay attention to what your mind does when I give you this phrase. Lover of wine. What's happening? So when I ask clients in my office to go through this exercise, most people don't know what enophile means. It means lover of wine. But when I give them the single word enophile, they can feel their mind trying to make sense of it. It's scrambling. Sometimes they'll even say, I feel a little stressed or anxious about this. But as soon as I say lover of wine, you get an image. Some people get an image of a beautiful bottle of wine or vineyards. Someone else might get an image that's more negative, maybe an alcoholic parent. But whatever it is, you understand the phrase lover of wine, and so your mind easily attaches a story or a picture. So that's how the delete technique works. You already have experience with a delete button. Now we're going to turn the delete technique into a powerful button to help you shift negative thinking to positive thinking. So the delete technique does two powerful things. The first thing it does is it raises your awareness of your thought patterns. Remember, you can't do anything about something you're unaware of. So you need to become more aware of what your thought patterns actually are. And the second thing it allows you to do is to make gentle, non-judgmental correction of negative thoughts and speech. And this is how it works. Anytime you find yourself having a negative thought or saying something negative, you simply say to yourself or out loud, delete, and you replace it with a positive. Now it doesn't matter if you had that thought or said that statement 5 minutes ago. At the point you become aware of it, you simply say delete, and you replace it with a positive. Actually, for the next 3 hours, I'd like you to just be really focused on the delete technique. Maybe take a Post-it or write yourself a couple of notes or an alarm on your phone that for the next 3 hours you're really focusing on this. Now what the delete is not is a license to police yourself. So the goal here is not to get all your thoughts or even most of your thoughts. It's just to begin to have the experience with how your thoughts can be transformed quickly and easily. So for the next 3 hours, each and every time you notice that you've had a negative thought or said a negative statement, you simply say delete, and you replace it with a positive. What's going to happen within that 3 hours is you're going to become more and more aware earlier and earlier in the process. So at first it was 5 minutes ago, but now you're catching your thoughts more towards the end of the thought. You'll catch yourself then more in the middle of the thought, and then you'll start catching yourself earlier in the thought. For many of you, you will develop the awareness in just this 3 hours that you may feel a negative thought forming, but before you're even consciously aware of it, you're able to delete it and not even have it. And that's real power. Now again, I'm going to say it again now, and you will hear me say it many more times throughout the session. The goal is progress, not perfection. The goal here is not to catch all your thoughts or even most of your thoughts. What we're beginning to do is recondition ourselves for more and more positive thoughts. And when I say positive, I also mean more honest thoughts. The best example I can give is an executive client who was in a C-level position. While she had a ton of potential and she was doing great work, she did have a lot of stress and anxiety, and they noticed, particularly in the morning, it took her a while to really hit her stride. So during one of our first sessions, she confided in me that from the moment she hit her alarm at 5 a.m. and got out of bed until she got to her office at about 8 a.m., she would say to herself, "I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late." She said her mornings were extremely stressful, and it had been made worse this year because her young daughter was starting kindergarten. And she said now, most mornings I drop her off, she's upset, she's crying, "Mommy, we're going to be late," and I feel really bad. So I remember it was January because the school year was half over. So I asked her, "How many times has your daughter been late for school?" And she looked at me almost offended and she said, "Why, never." I said, "Okay." And I asked her how many times she had been late for work. And she paused and she said, "Well, I was late once, but there was road construction and so everyone was late, so it didn't really matter." I said, "Great." So then I asked her a very powerful question. I said, "Are you in the habit of lying to others in the same way that you lie to yourself?" And in that moment, she had a light bulb moment. We tend to look at integrity as I'll be honest with you and you be honest with me, but we don't think about self-integrity. How many times do we lie to ourselves? And most of the time when we're lying to ourselves, it's not about how great we are. It's not that we're 6 foot tall and beautiful and Einsteins. Those are not the messages the average person is giving to themselves. The average person is engaging in thoughts and beliefs about not being enough, about being stressed, about being anxious. So when you think about it, if this woman got up at 5 in the morning and she's having this thought, "I'm going to be late till 8 o'clock, that's 3 hours every day, 5 days a week. That's 15 hours a week, almost the equivalent of a full wakeful day of lying to yourself. So think about it. What are the areas in your life where you might be lying to yourself? Now with this client, I got a really great text a couple days later. She said to me, with this client, I got a text a couple days later. It was amazing. She said, "You know what, I've been using the delete technique, and every time I have the thought or I catch myself saying, I'm going to be late," she said, "I say, delete, I'm going to be on time." She said, "Now even my daughter does it." It's totally transformed her mornings and her life. So now I'm going to give you some common examples that I hear from clients and audiences all the time, that I'm never going to get this done. Most people get the important things done in their life, and if they don't, there's a good reason for it. So if you find yourself saying, "I'm never going to get this done," delete, "I will get it done." If you're not going to get it done, delete, "I'm doing my best." So there's one caveat to the delete technique. Remember, you're shifting negative thinking to positive thinking, but it has to be believable. So if you're sitting in traffic and you're likely going to be late, saying, delete, "I'm going to be on time," is just a fantasy. That's not what this is about. It's about making it positive but honest. So if you're sitting in traffic and you're going to be late, delete, "I'm doing the best I can," because you are. So if you can't be positive, at least go with a neutral thought. So here are some other examples. So now I'm going to give you 4 examples, one for each reason that we suffer. Just see how these feel. So when you have the belief or some version of "I'm not enough," delete, "I am enough." I understand in the beginning that might not feel believable, but that's what we're working on, and trust me, you're going to get to the space of knowing that you are enough. So anytime you have a thought, "I'm not enough," or anything like it, you simply say, delete, "I am enough," and you say it with conviction. So let's look at the second one. What I want is not available to me. Right? I'm never going to find a loving partner. Delete, you will find a loving partner. Let's face it, there's a key for every lock, and you're unlocking bold change within yourself. So the third is the fear of rejection. So you call someone, leave a voicemail or send an email and you don't hear back and you start into, "I've been rejected." Delete, "I don't know what I don't know." For goodness sake, they could be on the beach. The fourth, the need for connection. Having the thought, have you ever been with a group and you think, I don't belong with this group? Delete, delete. I was invited to this group. Delete, delete. They invited me. Some version of that. Hopefully now you're getting an idea of what you're to do. Simply become aware of your thoughts, delete them, and replace them with the positive. It will dramatically help you. So hopefully by now you're getting a firm understanding of how the delete technique works. Simply know that you're using it, become aware of your thoughts, and use delete to shift the negative to the positive as long as it is believable to you. So the delete technique is one of those that the more you use it, the less you need it. Because the more you use it, you're going to be able to shift the vast majority of your thoughts and beliefs to something that's much more positive, which means you'll have less reason to need the delete technique. So in closing, I have 3 things I want to share with you. The first is an experience. Just take a moment, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and I want you to envision something that is mildly disturbing but not really upsetting. And as you focus on that, I want you to pay attention to where and how you experience that in your body. Go ahead. Let's take a few moments. Bring that into your mind's eye and key into your body. What are you feeling? What are the sensations? Now go ahead and take a deep breath and open your eyes because I would never leave you with a negative. Go ahead and roll your shoulders. And now take another deep breath. Close your eyes. And this time, just envision the very best experience you can. It can be the face of a loved one, it can be a time you felt a deep connection, or when you met with success. Whatever that is for you, just hold that in your mind's eye and key into your body. What are you experiencing? How and where are you feeling this within your body? Notice the difference. For the vast majority of people, even those who aren't good at visualization, when you hold the idea, the memory, or the visual of something disturbing, they feel tight, they clench their jaw, they feel closed up. Versus when you think about something that's your very best experience, most people feel much more expansive, open, and they naturally relax. I wanted to close with that to allow you to recognize how you are being affected by your thoughts. This will help you, that awareness will help you to use your delete technique. The second thing I want to leave you with is a great client I had. I'm going to tell you a little client story. So I was working with this gentleman in Pittsburgh, very high profile, household name. He's a great guy. So when I was teaching him the delete technique, I said, just pretend that that voice in your head is a separate person from yourself. And he thought about it for a moment, he looked at me and he smiled and he goes, you know what? If the voice in my head became a separate person, I not only wouldn't sit next to him on a flight, I'd take a different flight. And like I said, this was a great guy. He was very high functioning and positive. If he's struggling with that, chances are many of you are as well. And the third thing I want to leave you with is a quote. He said there are only 2 days in the year that nothing can be done. One is called yesterday, and the other is called tomorrow. So today is the right day to love, believe, do, and mostly live. That quote is by the Dalai Lama, and that's what I want you to do. Live your best life as you unlock bold change in all the areas that are important to you. So now that we've wrapped up Module 1, go ahead and download your step-by-step guide for the delete technique and the other materials. So I'll see you over Module 2, where we're going to do a powerful technique of upgrading the child, the hypnosis that I am enough, and we're going to help you uncover what's been holding you back so we can work through that and unlock bold change in your life. I'll see you in Module 2.